Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Map Round Show. This is the Built in Colorado series, as I like to say it. I'm going Rado for short now, Michael, because Colorado is too much work for me. It also sounds cooler. Where are you from? The Rado. Okay, Colorado. Okay, cool. But Michael Simpson, you are the founder and CEO of PAIRIN. Thank you for being here. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Look, I enjoy your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. As you probably enjoy my podcast as much as I'm enjoying the snow. That's literally outside. It's been shitting itself, as I like to say. Lots of snow everywhere. Schools delayed. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Michael, thank you for being here. You're doing some amazing things as an entrepreneur and with PAIRIN specifically. So, I'd love for you just to kick us off with a bit about your background and give us the elevator pitch of PAIRIN for our audience around the world. Over to you.
Yeah, sure. Well, my background is very much intertwined with what my company PAIRIN is doing. I grew up in a very disadvantaged situation, a home with a lot of abuse and bankruptcies and multiracial family and a lot more diversity that you would think a middle-aged white guy running a tech company would have in his family. I pretty much check every one of the boxes except for my own ethnicity. Um, and I because of the financial problems, had to drop out of community college and work. So I've been working since I was 14. Got into the computer industry in the 80s, back when you couldn't go to college to learn about personal computers and networking. And I did back then what is called today stacking credentials. Through that, I actually, and some really amazing mentors, I was able to, rise up to executive positions at a lot of great companies. I was fortunate enough to work for Eric Schmidt before he went and ran Google and do a lot of new product initiatives for him. And then at the peak of my career, I left and lived in Russia for 7 years, coaching adult children of alcoholics, many of them, to be successful in business, and came back to the United States and started PAIRIN. And as a coach, and as a marketing strategist and product person for decades, and someone who has experienced both sides of not knowing what you could do and not having the resources to do what you would want to do, I decided to start a company to make sure that people can understand their abilities, can build a career path that can change maybe their generational path, and to help people understand, and the employers that are looking at them understand, that someone's past doesn't have to define their future, that people should be evaluated based on their abilities and not their histories. And that's what PAIRIN is about.
Amazing. Very exciting background. Your time in Russia. Walk us through what your experience was there, like, because obviously there's the media perception, or the perception that media creates, isn't there? And then there's the reality on the ground. Like yesterday I was on Joe Rogan's Instagram page, and he posted this Russian sitting on a bear drinking vodka, you know what I mean, like a proper wild black bear, and he was like, this is apex Russian.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So there's a little bit more to that. My wife lived a year in Ukraine and then 13 years in Russia, and I lived 7 years in Russia. And so have visited Ukraine a lot. In fact, I was involved in a couple who's a Russian and he's a Ukrainian getting married in Kyiv, who are now refugees in England. And so this whole situation of Russia and Ukraine and the strain that has created in both countries is very near and dear to me right now, and just kind of breaks my heart daily. And people always ask, well, what was Russia like? And there's really no way to answer that question other than, well, it was not boring. The difference that most people don't understand is that Russian leaders are not Russians in the sense of the people that you would know. They are lied to on a daily basis. All of the state media is 100% controlled at this point. And the people you sit down to watch TV, that's all you have, right? They don't have other options. And so what we find in Russia is that it's very much a shame culture. The United States is more, and most Western countries are more guilt cultures, where the difference between, like I am bad and I did bad, like society functions because people, most of them, feel guilty when they do something wrong, right? And there's an understanding of a right and wrong. In Russia, it's a million shades of gray. And they what happens is when people do something wrong, they more have a shame, like I am a bad person kind of thing. And so dealing with an entire society that's built to shame people from a very young age is a different type of struggle for people to be able to find their own identity and to overcome that. There's a lot of amazing people. I'd say the biggest thing, Russians describe Americans as peaches and Russians as coconuts. And so we're all like soft and fuzzy and sweet on the outside, easily bruised. But when you ask us, how are you doing? We say fine, good, right? And my mom could be dying from cancer, right? And we're like, I'm fine, right? It takes asking somebody or having a deep relationship with them to get into the inside, because we're soft on the outside and hard on the inside. Russians are hard on the outside and soft on the inside. It might take months to get someone to consider you a friend, maybe years. But once you're inside, they'll give you everything. There's nothing that's off limits. Completely culturally different than Americans, although we are shifting more and more into a shame culture in the United States, we've been seeing. So that's a long answer to a short question, but there are no short answers to Russia.
No, and while you were talking there, I was showing some of the top 10 tourism places in Russia to go visit. And when you look at it, just like, I want to go there. Like, that looks pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Probably many of them were where I lived. I lived in the heart of St. Petersburg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right in the middle of the old town in St. Petersburg. 300-year-old city.
Huh. Yeah, that's also a bucket list city for me to go and see.
Yeah.
When I was in Europe, I lived in Europe for probably 10 years, like all over, and kept coming up, but never really like, cool, let's go. So definitely a place to go visit one day when things calm down.
That window may have closed.
I know, I was going to say, please, can it go back to normal? But sticking with the shame thing, I think it's quite an interesting premise for the rest of this conversation to maybe double click on, because I also came from like a pretty poor background, even though I was privileged in the sense of, white and in South Africa during apartheid. Like, I was privileged from that perspective, but still like poor. And also broken home, abuse, stuff like that. And I think for like a long time, like I also carried a lot of shame, with me around, because you just don't deal with your shit, and then you wind up just being like a very angry 30-year-old, and so that was kind of my my experience. Like, I resonate with what you're saying, and so I'm curious to link that idea into what you've done with PAIRIN, because it's very clear to me, like, if you go to PAIRIN's website, like, you're on a mission. Like, you're not just you're not trying to commercialize a gap. Like, you're a mission-driven founder, which is the type of founder, in my experience, that typically gets places, versus, say, someone that just wants to buy a nice car. You know what I mean? So what is your mission? Like, if having said the shame thing is like a large, sort of, premise for this whole discussion, like, what motivates you here?
Yeah. The biggest thing is that we really believe that every person has value. And I know that everybody says that. But the person that least believes that is usually the individual, right? Because they look at their social reference and they say, well, none of these people have done better, or like, I'm living in this environment, so this is my lot, right? This is where I'm going. And they don't calculate possibilities, and that if they were able to get some type of help, if they had belief, they would be able to um, change the way that they approach the world. So our foundational belief is that everybody has amazing valuable, but most people just never realize their potential. And so what happens is they tend to pursue jobs, they tend to pursue work rather than purpose and career. And folks like me and you had probably stumbled into the thing that we love, but we kissed a lot of career frogs along the way, you know? And so we believe that you can use different technology and data to tell people help people understand their potential, let them know how that potential and their skills maps to opportunities, and connect them to the appropriate resources. And it sounds like it's maybe sounds counterintuitive to choose to work primarily with government to do that, because we always see government as very often as the barrier to getting things done. But you know what? Industry, businesses, their mission is not to help the disadvantaged. They talk about it a lot. They throw money at it a lot. But when it comes down to it, they have to deal with their profits because they have a fiduciary responsibility to their investors, right? The people that don't have a fiduciary responsibility is the government. They have the responsibility to the people they serve, right? And so they are the ones that, if we could break down the barriers to them doing the job that they're there to do, to be able to connect people to the right resources, the relevant ones for them as individuals, and not overcomplicate things, we could change the lives of millions. There are 40 million people that are on government assistance in the United States. 40 million.
It's next level.
That's
I mean,
huge.
It is a thing. I mean, like, even in Africa, I mean, I don't know about other parts of Africa necessarily, but certainly in South Africa, there's a huge reliance on the state for it's like it's it's almost like state income insurance, if you like. So it's like, we'll pay you small grants every month, and it's been that way for forever. And we've got like 46% unemployment, and so when you're getting handouts all the time, you're kind of, it's like Elon Musk, I think, said, if you give an entrepreneur like TV, sex, and food, he'll give up on his dreams. So
I was in Joburg right after apartheid, and I remember coming out of the airport, and where you get the parking ticket, right? Or coming into the parking garage, when you get the parking ticket and you drive up to it and you reach and you grab it. There was a guy standing there that was getting paid to hand me the ticket. Right. And that was, not a jobs program that has a future. Right. That was like, there was no need for this person, but it was actually a job. Not that he was looking for tips, but that was what he was getting paid for. And so there are better ways to do that. And Yeah. And the thing is that there's two sides. There's people that say, folks, if you give them all the resources, or enough resources to survive, they won't work. And then there's another group of people, who absolutely believe that folks don't want to be on that. The truth is not so black and white. One of the big problems is that we've created a system. There's this thing called the fiscal cliff. And so a case manager, some of the people that we provide software for, they could say, hey, I've got you this great new job. You're going to get $4 an hour more. You're going to get $8,000 more a year. And what they can't do is do the math of how that person is going to lose $19,000 in benefits because they just went over a threshold. So you got them $8,000, but they're going to lose $19,000 in benefits. Are you helping them?
Mm.
The system right now is set up to make it too difficult for people to do that math, to know if they're helping or hurting. And people are so confused, very often they're just frozen.
Mm.
And
So,
that's some of the problems we're trying to solve.
so let's talk about the problem. Like, just in a tweet or in a like, what's the problem that you're solving as PAIRIN?
The big problem is that connecting to relevant resources that are available to individuals is too complex. People can't find them. They can't connect to them. And they therefore don't leverage what is already available. And we simplify that across all the agencies, all the different NGOs. We create this navigation layer that says, hey, I lost a job and want to find a career I'll love. Well, there's 13 different websites that you have to connect to be able to go through that entire process. That's one problem for that individual. But there's digitally, relationally, organizationally, those 13 things aren't connected. We connect them.
And a lot of investors obviously listen to the show. What would you say, and it might be a difficult one to answer, but what would you say the market opportunity is that you guys are going after in dollars?
Well, there's three different opportunities. We do data integration, we do workflows, and we do case management. Each one of those individual things are actually multi-billion-dollar industries. And so we're creating a category ourselves. If you look at just the U.S. Department of Labor, their discretionary budget for workforce is over $20 billion a year.
So it's not small then.
No, this is there was $8.6 billion that the federal government allocated new in March of this year, that is yet to be spent. That's all net new just because of COVID, you know?
Yeah. And so, Michael, what have you guys built in terms of your solution or product? What is, and I know it's My Journey, but explain, what is My Journey and how does it work?
Yeah, so My Journey is an enterprise software platform that I'll walk you through it this way. It actually has a business logic on the front end that will allow us to identify the needs, desires, stage of life of any individual. So we ask a few simple questions. And then there's that business logic, then will introduce little packages of content. We call them outcomes to that individual to walk them through different steps. As they answer questions, the system further personalizes and learns them. And then, so it's built around this concept of coaching. right? So when you're coaching someone, one of the best questions that you can ever ask someone is, what do you want? Full stop. What is the outcome that you want? It's the same thing that educators do. It's called backwards design. They teach with the end in mind. And this is what you're going to learn. All right. This is the outcome that you want. Once you get agreement on an outcome, you can set goals to accomplish that outcome and all the steps to accomplish those goals. So what we do is we identify with business logic the outcome that you want for a particular group of things. Then there are goals underneath it, and the steps is a content management system. The content management system is completely configurable. It can be embedded curriculum, video, graphic, copy, uploadable files, downloadable files, forms. And so it's completely no-code workflows that allow you to take 15 different websites, forms, applications, and put them in a workflow without any software developers.
Amazing. And this technology, like how much traction have you guys received? I mean, how many individuals have you put through your platform? What kind of traction have you guys received to date?
Yeah, so we launched this initial product on July 1st of 2019. And since then, we are statewide in Florida, statewide in Virginia, Colorado, 9 different metropolitan areas in California, across all of Washington, D.C., and we're adding other organizations as well. So with our current contracts, there'll be 1.5 million users on our platform in this coming year.
Amazing. That's incredible. How does that make you feel if you go back to like your motivation and you got 1.5 million like users on your platform? Like, do you feel like you're successful or you're only getting going?
No, I don't have a lot of time to like revel in any type of success. I'm one of those people that has to be reminded to celebrate. It's kind of an entrepreneur dilemma. Is that we have to constantly celebrate what is and not just think about what's left to do. Yesterday, I felt successful because yesterday, 4 of my staff visited 2 workforce centers in Colorado. And because we got a new contract, we're replacing their entire statewide labor exchange. And they came back with all these notes, and my team came back and said, we're going to change these people's lives. Look at all the things we can help them with when we deploy our software. Yesterday, I felt successful because my team was so excited about the impact they were going to have. And yeah, that was a good day for me.
Well, you got to have those good days. I was chatting to a founder not too long ago, and he was like, I have more bad days than good days.
Yeah, I happen to live here in Denver. It's right by Ball Arena. Across the, probably a quarter mile away is Elitch's, which is a big amusement park. And my wife always says it's appropriate that we live right next to the roller coasters. And so we've gotten to where instead of her just asking me how my day was, she says, were your hands up? Because on the roller coaster, when you're enjoying it, you put your hands up. But every day's a roller coaster. It's like, hey, we got the big deal. Oh, crap, we got the big deal, right? Because now I got to deal with staffing for the big deal because we're still a small company, right? So our thing is every day's a roller coaster, but some days your hands are up.
Exactly. So one of the things I was looking at when I was doing research into you guys was the fact that you closed a $4.3 million Series A funding round back in January 21, which was like literally in COVID. So
that was hard.
Hard. Like, how did you do that? Like, that's like, I don't know how that's possible. That's pretty hard.
That was really difficult. So we had some convertible notes out before then, and we needed to convert them. And we had a bunch of delays, and we didn't lose any of those contracts really in 2020, but we had a bunch of delays, and because everyone kind of just froze and stopped spending money. And so our investors are social impact investors, and they are in for the long haul. And so they said, hey, let's make sure that we support you to get through this craziness, and make sure that you continue to be a going concern, and you have the resources to be able to grow the company, because right now is when a company like yours is needed, right? So, I've always said that there's three things that thrive during a recession: alcohol sales, chocolate sales, and workforce funding. And I only do one of those right now. So
Yeah, I don't do any of those. Maybe option two. What's behind curtain number 4?
yeah.
So, just curious, what was the impact? Funnily enough, you mentioned like the three things, one of them being like the third option there on the workforce. Well, how did COVID actually accelerate your growth during, during the pandemic, if at all?
Yeah, it's actually been good for us in many ways. One, there was a after the lull, there was a lot of funding from the federal government, and it's still coming out. So unprecedented funding that it's never happened, and hopefully it'll never happen again in our lifetime, of like literally hundreds of billions of dollars that are flooded into helping people reskill, get jobs, helping the programs that support them. And so a lot of those programs use our software, and the government agencies that distribute that support and connect people to that support use our software. And so what ended up happening is that a lot of these organizations suddenly got more money than was in their budget, and they didn't have plans. And so they start looking for ideas. And we happen to have a thing that can help them accomplish a lot of what they've always wanted to do, but never really had the budget to do. The trick was getting into the conversations, because we're still a small company, right? So we really relied on our reputation with existing customers, and a lot of introductions from those types of customers. I had a client today. I'm looking at the text right now. Said, I just had a conversation with Mississippi, Minnesota, Tennessee, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and about 3 other states at this conference. You may be getting some calls. And that was one of my clients, right? So that's always makes you feel good.
It does. It does. It really does. And especially if your clients are selling you, it's the best type of salesperson you're ever going to have in your business.
For sure.
So, where are you going with this? What's the vision? Are you looking at just North America and that's enough for you? Do you have ambitions to scale beyond the US? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah. So the company that I ran marketing and strategy for, we sold it in 2001 before I went to Russia, was a CRM company. And we grew that company substantially, I think from 43 million to 106 million in a year. And that was through international expansion, primarily through a reseller channel. I think we expanded to 25 countries in like 2 years. It was crazy. There's a need for what we're doing, pretty much anywhere where there's complexity that we can simplify. So my original plan was, let's wait a couple more years before we start doing an international expansion. But recently, there's been some companies who have international presence that have approached us and said, hey, we'd like to take this to 20 plus countries. And so that may speed things along. If I do it myself, I'll probably wait a couple of years to kind of get us to a certain size. But if I can have the right partner, I'm happy to accelerate that.
And when are you thinking about an exit? I mean, it seems to me if you're getting this international, you know, opportunity, there's clearly a scale, uh, roadmap here.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about an exit? And the reason why I'm asking that also is because there's capitalists who start up. You see a gap in the market, commercialize the gap, go build something, but they hate the business and they sell it and get rich. Like that's that guy. And so for him to be thinking about an exit kind of makes sense. Like he's thinking about it all the time because he doesn't. It's not a thing that he is
Yeah.
personally motivated to. You know what I mean? Outside of money. Whereas with you, you're very mission driven, right? So are you thinking about an exit?
That there is you have as a founder, you have a responsibility to build your company in such a way that somebody would want to buy it, right? When I started, but as a mission focused founder, that's that's not my plan. A company that someone would want to buy is just a well-run company, right? That has a good future. And so those things kind of go together. Um, I had two friends of mine, good mentors, before I started this company, and they were very complimentary. They said, "Michael, we'll assume that you'll be successful. What's your number?" I'm like, "I haven't even started my company yet." And they're like, "What's your number?" And what they meant by "what's your number" is that assuming success, there's a point where people are going to want to share in that success, but not do the hard work in the beginning, right? They want to acquire it or merge or something. They basically told me that I needed to come up with what is enough for me so that I don't hold on too long when I'm not maybe the right guy to keep the company growing, right? And for me, I am constantly firing myself from jobs, right? You start off wearing all the jobs, right? All the hats. And so my COO and I are constantly figuring out what job do we need to fire ourselves from now? We've just hired 5 more people, right? And so there'll be a point where I'm not the guy to take this company forward in the role that is as broad as my role. Maybe I move to being chairman and somebody else runs it. I don't know where that is. I am not pursuing, I'll be very clear, I am not pursuing anybody to acquire us. I deal with interest on a regular basis.
Mm. I
So I love my job. I also know that I am probably not the best person to make this $500 million company,
Yeah, I agree. I'm that guy. I like, as in, like, I'm not that guy. Like, I don't do that. I'm like, I use the analogy of a house and a building. So I will build you a house, profitable house, put everything in place so you can go take the house and then add levels to it to create a skyscraper. But I have zero interest, none whatsoever, in being like the CEO of a 500-man shop, or business. Like that's that's literally my idea of hell. Like my previous company, and I know this because my previous company had like 55 staff,
Yeah.
and I just like I went from loving it to not loving it because everything changed to people and culture and this kind of stuff. And so
Yeah.
you to your point, like what do you fire yourself from in terms of like jobs to be done? Like mine is, I'm a visionary, dude. Like I can, that's what I love doing is starting and building, but like scaling and, getting to Series D and IPO and like, I'm really not sure. By the way, and I actually think that like there's another stat that I saw, like half, like it's a crazy number. Over 50% of venture capital based startups in the US, the founder is replaced within a 36-month period or less than that or something. It's a ridiculously high number. And I actually
Really?
think, yeah, it's like, I'm not even spicing. I mean, that's a genuinely true number. And the reason for that, my sense is that when you, especially younger founders, like I've done 14 startups over 25 years, so I've kind of like hit my straps and I'm done. But if it's number 2 or number 1 and you get some traction in that, then I think you just don't have the experience. Like, you just don't, so you don't, So like, and even an MBA is not going to be enough to give you the skill set you need to get there. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to be CEO of a massive company for 10 years. Like, maybe then that's enough. And when you've got, venture capital money behind you, and you've got the interests of shareholders, like you touched on up front, like, suddenly it's not about you. It's about how much can we get this business to grow, and how fast can we do that, so we get the valuations that we want, so that when there is interest from an acquirer, we can exit, and the right people are there, and the story is there, and we can do that. But if you're Adam Newman, question mark, like, is he the right guy? I don't know. After,
Yeah.
we work one.
One of the things that I do a lot of mentoring for like Techstars and other accelerators, and I thought being an entrepreneur in big companies and medium-sized companies would make me a good entrepreneur. Nah, this is a whole different set of skills. The thing I didn't understand was all of the investor relations, and I sucked at it for quite a while. And we pivoted our company in 2018, launched this product in 2019. I pushed a reset button. My cap table didn't, but I pushed a reset button, and kind of started over with the knowledge of having done a really poor job of entrepreneuring for all those other years. So I consider this same company my second real serious software company that I started from my own, because I learned, I reset, and we kind of started over. One of the things that I advise other founders on is looking at, don't listen to what the investors are saying. They all say that they're real patient capital. Look at how long their investments they've actually held. If they have a pattern of 2 years, 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, and you know what? You're going to get 2 years. Mm-hmm. They're gonna do whatever they can in that amount of time to push you to be able to make that powder dry again.
Yep, absolutely. So I just want to take, I'm just cognizant of time. So I want to have a bit of fun with you while we've got some time left. So let's see. So if I'm going to give you the keys to the Matt Brown Show time machine, and I'm going to ask you to go back in time to yourself on day one of PAIRIN, and you're sitting across from the desk from yourself. What advice would you give yourself about building PAIRIN?
Don't raise money so quick. Straight up. Just don't raise outside funds until after you've proven product market fit, and you can make a go of it.
So what would you do differently then? Would you bootstrap it for longer? Like, what was the consequence of raising too early? Was it giving away too much too early? Was it the wrong type of investors? Could you have done it without the money? Like,
I could have, but I was impatient, and that was the problem. I was too impatient. Had this great idea, wanted to build that thing, saw competition everywhere around me, and you know what? That competition wasn't as competitive as I had imagined it was, and I had a lot more time than I thought I did. And so there was that sense of urgency that I have people offering me money. I took their money, and I didn't have enough of it figured out yet. And if I had waited, I would have changed some things, and I would have been in much more control. And I'd probably have about 25 to 50% more of my company than I have now.
That's another interesting point, isn't it? It's like equity is the most expensive form of financing. I'd rather take a, I don't know, promissory note or something rather than like, hey, here's 20% and, for like 500 grand, like, it doesn't seem worth it, but on the other hand, it's a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? It's like, well, if you don't have the money, how do you hire the right people, especially if you're doing hard science things?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's like sometimes you just gotta. And I think the other thing to say, by the way, is like I think it actually all comes down. It's not even about the money and when you raise it or how much and what you give away. For me, and what I've learned is it's like, who are you about? Like, what type of entrepreneur or founder are you? Because I think we don't think about that because we're so busy trying to beat the competition or get the product built, or like we don't actually stop to think, hang on, how much scale is enough for me? Like you said, like what's the number? Like how much is enough? Well, how much is enough? And I was actually talking to a client of mine in New York last week, and I said to him, like, my number is like $10 million, and he was like, no, 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 that's not enough. I'm like, but it's enough for me, like, because I know, given what I do and how old I am, and like how I make money now, like it's enough for me. Like I don't need to go and build the next AI computer vision platform thing and list it on Nasdaq. But he was like, his number is 100 million. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Yeah.
outside of the number, it's important to think of like, well, how much scale is enough for me?
Well, that's the difference though, is the mission focused company, because the scale to me is way beyond my need for the number. I grew up poor. I've been wealthy and I've been poor. I lived in Russia by choice, right? Um, and so my wife and I made that spreadsheet. I spent weeks on a spreadsheet saying, I would like to live a generous life, right? Not ridiculous, but I'd like to help the people in my circle that are in need. And I, this is what we need to live, and to live what I think would be comfortably. And that number's not 100 million. Nobody needs $100 million, right? That's just a fact.
Well,
And
I'm sorry, just to add to that, Matthew McConaughey said it right. He said, no, sorry, Jim Carrey. He was like, I really wish everybody could achieve their dreams because then they would realize just how pointless a lot of it is, you know?
yeah, well, there's a Chinese curse that says, "May all your dreams come true."
Yeah, exactly. God gives it all to you so you can figure out if you can handle it or not. Because then you have a whole different other set of problems, right? Then you got needy family.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the thing, that I'll hit my number probably long before I'll hit the scale that I want my company to have to reach the impact. That's why there'll be a day when I'm not the guy driving it. And I want it to continue to make its impact, but it's probably not going to be me at the helm.
No. And you should be okay with that,
I'm totally okay with that.
And I
Look,
think,
look how gray I am.
I know, right? Look at me. Look at my
I'm,
stubble.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not as young as you. I've been around for a while. I left my career at its peak. 40 years old. I moved to Russia for 7 years, right?
Mm.
And you know that was a choice I made because it mattered more to me how I could help people than you know having. He sold a lot of software on my tombstone. Like what does that serve?
Mm. Yeah, I want to, if you're okay with it, Michael, I'd love to send you a copy of my book because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, I actually wrote about, and I wrote about like if you want to know, like if you need to make a big decision, you must extend the timeline within which that decision lives. So, in other words, if you're like, oh, should I go to raise money in this quarter or next quarter? Wrong question. Question is, if I raise this money in 10 years' time, what is the impact? Or, and better said, even as like, well, on the day of my death, you know, how is this going to define my legacy? Because I think if you can imagine what people are going to be saying about you, like on the day of your funeral, like what are they saying, like what are the actual words that they're using, how would they describe you? And when you work back from that day, right, the day of your passing, all the way back in time to today, then you get perspective. And I think oftentimes when you're stuck inside the bottle, you can't read the label, as a founder, and so you make stupid decisions.
There was a guy that really inspired me. His name was Kenneth Rundle. Actually, it was like a Robert John Kenneth Rundle. He was a Brit. He actually went to Oxford when C.S. Lewis was teaching there. So, and his goal was to die penniless, spend everything he had. Unfortunately, he lived about 10 years longer than his money. So he started to spend his son's money. Um, and you know what? I've never seen a person who lived with more purpose in my life, who spent every moment of every day trying to help others. And his mind, he prayed until the day he died that his mind would be sharp. And when his body was failing, and on his deathbed, when I was there, his mind was amazingly sharp. And I pray the same thing, because if I can't move anymore, I can help someone, and I can coach them. I can ask them good questions because I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to make more. And I can help them like you do, Matt. I can help them think and reason and reevaluate when necessary, and I can encourage them. And that legacy of, like, to be able to do that when I'm physically not able to do other things means that people have to come to me, which means I had better be doing that now so they'll know where to go. And if I'm spending all my time thinking about how I'm going to do this, or I'll be helping people later when I'm this much richer, then you know what? I'll be sitting in that bed alone with no purpose.
And drowning in regret. Let's just throw that out there. Because that's the issue, isn't it? It's like, well, because like every day you're alive, you kind of like making a credit or a debit in this regret balance sheet, if you like. And when and everybody's going to have to cash in that check. It's going to be big for some and less big for others, so you don't want to be that guy holding a bag of regret, right? Like that's a pretty shitty situation to be in. But Michael, I feel like I could keep chatting to you forever, man. It's been a real privilege having you here, buddy. And congrats on all the success you've had today, man. It's been a real privilege having you here.
Likewise, and thank you for having taking the time to have a conversation. My favorite thing to do is to have conversations that matter with people who care, and I could do that all day.
Yes, you can. Alrighty, thanks, Mike. Cheers, everybody.